Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
And we would ask the bands if we could play on their breaks. and they never said yes.
Shocking.
But we would tell anybody, we're a band. And
yeah, I always thought we were great. Like-minded young people. We were funny, we were cute, we dressed great, and we played okay. Our songs were,
I'm Sarah Fenske. Let's go back to 1975. Gerald Ford was president. Captain and Tennille topped the Billboard charts. And a group of girls in fluorescent formed a punk band that was way ahead of its time. They weren't even out of high school yet, but their music slapped.
Vulgarity is overused. Debauchery leaves me unamused. So if you really want to be in the groove, be like me and be a prude. It's so boring to be lewd. I'm a prude. It's not shocking to be crude. Be a prude.
And that band was called the Welders, and they had a great run in the 70s. They even recorded an album in 1979. But then their business manager ran into financial trouble. The album was scrapped. The Welders broke up. This month, though, that album will finally be released by local BDR Records. Owner Jason Ross, also known as Jason Rerun, said that when he first heard the Welders' long-lost tracks, he was immediately blown away.
It was lightning in a bottle. They formed in 1975 and were already playing essentially, what would become punk rock a couple years later. Their first show was in 1976, so that was, the first punk rock concert in St. Louis didn't happen until early 77. So they were definitely ahead of their time.
And that is Jason Rerun. Now, the Welders album comes out this month. That is 42 years after they recorded it. And joining us now are three of the band's founding members. Kelly Draper was the Welders guitarist, and she's known to its members as Rusty. Today, she's a librarian and lives in St. Louis. Rusty, welcome.
thank you for having us.
And we're also joined today by Jane Fujimoto. She was the Welders drummer and then keyboardist. Today, she's a digital creator for Mattel and lives in L.A., but she's also here with us today. So, Jane, welcome.
Hey, I'm thrilled to be here.
And we're also joined today by Jane's younger sister, Caroline Fujimoto. She was the Welders bassist, and she is an executive assistant who lives in St. Louis. Caroline, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, Caroline, you were just 13 when the Welders formed, but in some ways, you're the one who brought this group together. How so?
Well, I have known Rusty since I was 10 years old, and then by the time we got to junior high, the various members were in my different classes, so we all got together as friends. Stephanie was
I didn't have any friends.
So, exactly. So that's why when I met Stephanie, I knew she and my sister would get along, so I would end up passing notes between classes for them, and we all got along really well together.
And so, Rusty, you guys were friends first and then became a band. Who had the idea to put together a band?
It was sort of mutual, but I know Jane always wanted to have a band.
Yeah, and then Rusty was the same way. We both really were into rock and roll.
And what bands were you into?
My favorite band at the time was probably Mott the Hoople, and we really liked the New York Dolls and T-Rex, Slade, bands like that.
And I imagine that this was somewhat unusual for other people in Florissant at that time.
Oh yeah, everyone was into Three Dog Night.
Okay.
Wait, I liked Hudson Brothers, Razzle Dazzle Hour, so yeah, I was a little bit behind the rest.
But so did you guys kind of feel like outsiders, liking this music that you liked that was just a bit ahead of where most people in St. Louis were at?
Yeah, we were definitely outsiders.
Outsiders.
Yeah.
And so is that part of the idea of wanting to form a band? That, hey, we like this music, we're the only ones around who like this music?
I don't know if that was necessarily the impetus. It was more that we just really, really liked rock and roll. We liked poring over the magazines, seeing the bands. And, at first we thought maybe we would write a magazine. And then we decided, why write it? Why not just do it? And so that from there we, started forming a band and playing on random acoustic instruments or drumming on books.
Yeah.
And did you have, experience with music? Had you guys had music lessons?
Not at all.
No, we came up with the idea first, and then we sort of picked our instruments. I always wanted to play drums, and then the band was basically based on friendship first.
Friendship first, and then you had to teach yourself these instruments.
Yes, well, we had to buy instruments. We had to get a job to buy instruments.
But you did. You went and got that job. You bought the instruments.
Yes, I mean, most of us worked at a Chinese restaurant called the Dragon Inn.
In Bridgeton, yes.
Bridgeton,
Yeah, 4 out of 7 of us all worked at that same restaurant.
And you were just raising money so that you could get these instruments. Did you have any sense of whether or not you'd be any good?
No.
We didn't care about that.
That was immaterial.
That's why punk rock was perfect for us.
Exactly.
So, Jane, part of what is so great about this story is all of you kept diaries during this time. Jane, you
right.
still have your diaries. You have a diary entry from December 15th, 1975 that reads, "Blew up at Mom for getting Caroline a John Denver guitar songbook." I mean, John Denver, I went in my room and cried. Did your mom not fully understand what you were aiming for with this band?
I don't think she, no, not at all. But Caroline did play John Denver at a school concert, didn't you? So it did come in handy.
Exactly. There you go. I think that's why she probably bought it. I accompanied like a junior high choir.
So this wasn't as big of an insult, Caroline, as maybe it sounds.
No.
So yeah, but we did return it for a Rolling Stones songbook, though.
And so you get these instruments, you put together this band. Rusty, how did you even know what punk was and sort of how to go about like coming up with the aesthetic you wanted?
I think, well, we were doing it before we knew it had a name, I guess. We were, the whole DIY thing, teach yourself the instruments and, get together and just try and like learn songs, which now, you can look up on the internet and find guitar tabs and things. It makes it so much easier. But
yeah, I mean, I learned to play drums by watching drummers on TV, like the Midnight Special, basically where you put your hands and your feet and all that stuff.
And Caroline, how did you learn how to be the bassist?
It's because nobody else wanted to play the bass. That's how I became the bassist. It's because it's the last 4 strings of the guitar, and Mom and Dad had gotten us an acoustic guitar, so I ended up playing bass, just basically playing the bottom 4 strings of a regular acoustic guitar, and I think I had like a music class in 5th grade, and that was like the year it dawned on me what those little black dots on a musical staff meant, and it was like a lightning bolt going, oh my God, that translates to actual notes on a guitar and things like that. So
we had a really good elementary school music teacher.
Yes,
She taught you how to read music.
Yes.
I mean, most kids, when I spoke to later on, Mrs. Hutcherson.
Mrs. Hutcherson. So she kind of helped you get started. Something that's curious to me about all this is at the time there were very few all-women bands doing rock, this kind of rock.
Oh, certainly.
Did that ever give you pause? Like, we can't do this, we're girls? Or did that never even occur to you?
Never occurred to me. Never.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, we did know that we were doing something special and something out of the ordinary, but, that didn't deter us at all, no.
So I want to play one of your songs. This is Pervert.
You've got a PhD in perversion. You're a doctor of depravity. You went through 6 years of school and graduated with a moral cavity. Flashing on the streets, you're really obscene, but you think you're really keen. Pervert. You're a perv with a capital P. Go on and do what you want with the phone, but keep your grimy mitts off me.
And that is by the Welders. I have 3 of the founding members of the Welders here in studio with me today. This song, P-E-V-E-R-T. Rusty, who wrote the songs?
Well, that one Stephanie and I wrote, and it was the very first song we wrote for the Welders.
And so this idea, this theme of pervert, what got you onto that?
Well, partly life experience.
No
Pretty
kidding.
much. In the 70s, anywhere you went, you're kind of subject to catcalls and or worse. And then various inspirations also. I think probably like Monty Python. They were always talking about perverts and things like that.
So that's where the word for what you were experiencing came from.
And the chorus, I think that came from like Connie Francis' song "Vacation," where she spells out the title of the song. So it's just
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so you guys are writing these songs. I mean, this song sounds like something that could play on the radio today. As you're playing this, Caroline, did you have a sense like, yeah, this song is working?
No. Not.
It did not work.
How could you say that? I mean, the song sounds great.
It's one thing to look at it like decades later, but when you're kids, you're just going through it and just going through just practicing and trying to start and stop at the same time, and it's just you just don't think about those kind of things. Or I think Jane thought we were like all like really
I
special.
thought we were great.
Yeah, Jane. I'm going
to read an excerpt from Jane's diary. How nice to have access to your diary as we're having this interview today. Jane wrote this in September of 1976, quote, "In a monumental 8-hour rehearsal, we figure out Kimberly by Patti Smith. For the first time, I got the feeling of being in a band, all caps, exclamation point. And then just 1 week later, Jane, you wrote, God divided the world into 3 parts, the Welders, people we associate with, and everyone else." It's amazing.
Yeah, we thought. I thought very highly of ourselves. I thought we were doing something really great.
I feel like you were right.
And the rest of us were riddled with doubt. And Caroline had a lot of feelings of ambivalence being in a band.
And so, Rusty, I mean, there was some ambivalence there. How did you go to the point of from working on these songs to saying, okay, let's do a show?
We always went to dances, and we couldn't get into bars, so it was usually dances.
Went to the Admiral.
Or the Admiral, and we would ask the bands if we could play on their breaks. And they never said yes.
Shocking.
But we would tell anybody, we're a band, and including going to record stores, which was a big hangout because that's where the records were and that's where the music magazines were. And, we'd badger the radio store employees. And so one day, in telling one of those employees, we're in a band, but we can't find anywhere to play, he said that his name was Norman Schoenfeld. He told us that, he had a friend, Jim Maresca, who had a band called Candy, and we could probably open for them. And so they arranged for us to play.
So, Jane, you always knew that this band had something. You had a lot of other members who were kind of skeptical or nervous. Was it hard to get everybody on board for, we're doing this gig?
Actually, I think there was a lot of stage fright involved, and
Yes.
But at the same time, we lived for this stuff. We were, really into rock and roll, and, it was like, what are we going to wear? And, what instruments are we going to play? I think we borrowed instruments for that show, or
We did.
played
Yes.
their instruments.
Yes.
No, I think everybody was really enthusiastic about it.
So you mentioned, what are we going to wear? You guys looked amazing. We have a photo of the 70s era Welders. You can see that on our Twitter and also our St. Louis on the Air Instagram. Both are at STL on Air. If you want to check this out. How did you figure out what to wear?
Mostly from magazines, rock magazines, and the rock magazines like Cream and Circus, they were really a lifeline to what was going on in the world. And we felt amongst them,
And so, Caroline, this first performance, how did this go?
It went as well as it possibly could, I think, considering that it was I was 14 years old, and we were just really nervous. And a couple of members, David Surkamp from Pavlov's Dog, which was like, pretty big rock star, had shown up, and some friends of ours from the Moldy Dogs were there. We had a lot of some friends there to support us, but it was really exciting. I just remember at one point my guitar strap fell off, so I ended up like holding up my bass up in the air, and it was just really punk rock and really a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of our other guitarists was playing a different song from the rest of us.
Well, I
but
wasn't
apart
going to
from-
mention that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very punk rock.
It wasn't Rusty. Actually.
And did you guys just kind of roll with it, or did you all stop like wrong track?
No, we went with it.
We
just went
powered
with
through it.
Exactly.
So you had this first gig, and it went surprisingly well. Rusty, did things just kind of take off from there?
Well, Jim and Norman began managing us, and so they also had various bands they played in, and they kind of formed punk bands for a punk rock festival, the first punk rock festival in January of 1977. And so we opened that show, and I guess there were 3 other bands, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, the Moldy Dogs,
Cigarette Butts.
Cigarette Butts, and Lila's band. I
Yeah.
can't remember what their name was.
So earlier we mentioned some of the sexism that was just endemic in the 70s. Did you run into that as you're playing these shows?
Constantly.
Yeah,
Constantly.
From the other bands, from audience members?
All of the above.
all of the above. Yeah.
I would say so. I mean, come on, we're teenage girls. Everybody just pretty much thought we were a novelty act, or it's like, I think it was advertising for the first punk rock festival. I think somebody got it to like the Channel 5 news. It was like Dick Ford and John Elbow. They were like talking about it on the news, and they said, oh yeah, there's like a all-girl punk band that's going to be playing, and they were like chuckling amongst themselves, and I thought, oh wow, that's really exciting, but they're kind of like making us out to be like a little circus act kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
but that was just something that we faced all the time, but just, you know.
It doesn't sound like you let it stop you in any way.
Not at
No,
all.
I mean,
Not at all.
that's the more benign things that happen. I mean, you had people shouting things at you, take your clothes off, get off the stage.
Yeah.
Did you ever shout back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
all the time.
And we included some of that in the albums. In between some of the tracks, you have our lead singers interacting with the audience.
And Rusty, I understand you would sometimes yell at the audience if they weren't being sufficiently just into it, not just if they were being pervs, but if they were just sitting there. What would you yell?
Oh, sometimes we'd say things like, is this an audience or an oil painting?
I mean, it sounds like you guys were just having a blast.
Somebody had to.
We had to enjoy ourselves because the audience wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah, it was we suffered for our art, now it's your turn.
We're talking today to 3 of the founding members of the Welders. This is a band that came out of Florissant in 1975. They were formed. They had a remarkable run, played a lot of shows, and this is all before they graduated from high school. We're talking to Jane Fujimoto, who was the drummer and then keyboardist, her sister Caroline, who was the bassist, and Kelly Draper, better known as Rusty, who was the guitarist. We do want to let you know you can now get a hold of this album, the remastered version of what was recorded in 1975. Use the pre-order link at rerunrecordsstl.com. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Welcome back. We're talking today to 3 founding members of the Welders. That's the 70s era all-girls punk band that blossomed in Florissant, only to never see their album released in its day. Kelly Draper, who's better known as Rusty, was the Welders guitarist and still lives in St. Louis, and she's joined in studio today by the sisters who co-founded the group with her. Jane Fujimoto was the Welders drummer and then keyboardist, and today lives in L.A., and her little sister Caroline Fujimoto was the Welders bassist and now lives in St. Louis. Now, the Welders have seen new interest in recent years. An EP of 4 songs was released in 2010 by BDR Records, and now BDR is issuing the entire remastered, never-before-released 1979 album as it was intended on vinyl. BDR owner Jason Rerun told our producer Emily Woodbury that the Welders weren't just ahead of the punk scene. They also recorded tracks that anticipated the garage revival of the 1980s.
The later stuff is a little more 60s girl group kind of garage rather than trying to be punk. They added an organ, and those songs are really just amazing because it was kind of, there was a big garage revival scene in the like early to mid 80s, and again they were ahead of their time already doing that kind of sound before bands like the Pandoras and other bands who became famous for doing that sound. So in a very small amount of time, they kind of progressed into a different sound a little bit, more of a kind of 60s garage sound. And still, I'm just amazed that they were doing that before it was cool, I'll just say. Doing it organically, 2 or 3 years before anybody else was.
And that is Jason Rerun of local BDR Records. Now, this is from the Welders album, and it showcases the 60s garage sound that Jason describes. This is Earth Dies Screaming from the about-to-be-released album Our Own Oddities, 1977 to 1981. And that is Earth Dies Screaming by the Welders. Jane, tell us the story of this song.
Wow, I've never heard myself on the radio. That's me singing, everyone. This song is, we had grown up a little bit, and we branched out into a different sound. And I know that Jason says it's a garage sound, but we were more influenced by post-punk bands like Ultravox and Gary Newman and Magazine, those kinds of bands. But, more mature lyrics, not funny.
Yeah.
we had been through a lot at that point.
And Caroline, you mentioned here that this draws on some conversations, that Jane wrote it, but she maybe drew from life?
Yeah, it was just some bits and pieces of just conversations that we had with people was what I heard talking to also some of our friends is what she put into the lyrics.
And Jane, when you say you'd been through a lot, what are you alluding to there?
Well, just sort of banging our head against the wall for 5 years or whatever, trying to sort of make it as a rock band and
Be taken seriously.
Yeah, never being taken
that song we had
seriously.
we recorded that song after we had already broken up actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean
Very frustrating.
it was our swan songs, and it was just something that we want to get done because we really liked that song
People
a lot.
could not see our greatness.
Yeah, it's their fault, right?
Always.
So you guys recorded this album. This happened in 1979. I mean, did you think, okay, we're going to have this album come out. This is going to be the big break?
Well, I mean, actually, the album was recorded over a period of time. But the very first thing that we recorded in 1979, we thought we were in a 24-track studio. We thought, oh yeah, this is it. We're gonna make it. We're gonna really do this.
And then what happened?
Well, nothing happened, basically.
Through no fault of your own.
Yeah, and but it's great to be recognized now. But it's just sad that we weren't recognized in our time.
Rusty, when did you realize this album was never coming out?
I guess it probably took about a year and a half after the actual recording.
And this was because of just financial trouble on the part of your business manager.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we know for certain it was financial trouble. We just know that in exchange for recording time, the studio was going to be advertised in the publication that our manager was put out, and it was supposed to be for a year. And instead, after 6 months, it was folded. So he never owned the master tape.
Oh, okay. And so then those masters were believed to be lost at that point.
We imagine the studio, because they were so expensive at the time, they probably recorded over them.
And so at that point, did you guys basically give up on the Welders? Caroline?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was 19 when the band ended. So yeah, it was we had to grow up and have a life.
Our drummer left too, and it was like, oh, the monumental task of trying to find yet another female musician. It was just
And I
too much.
moved to California with another band.
That too.
I'll show them.
It's your fault.
And so you continued to play in bands when you were out in California, but I understand, Rusty, for you, this was it. You never played in another band.
No, I mean, we kind of, some of us were kind of burnt out from the experience, from, like Jane said, just, banging your head against the wall for so many years and not being taken seriously. And it just wasn't very satisfying. Plus, we were getting ready to graduate college, and so we were kind of focusing on that.
Yeah. And Caroline, I understand you never even told people that you'd been in this band. I feel like I would brag about this nonstop.
None of my coworkers, nobody knows anything about my personal life or my past life or anything like that. They don't know anything about even being in the History Museum. I just never mentioned it to anybody. It's like, it just doesn't come up in conversation,
I think I'd find a way to tell people, but yeah. So you guys really all moved on from this moment, and then the moment found you again. And this all seems to have started back almost like 11 years ago. What happened at that point that suddenly all was not lost?
Jason Rerun and Matt Harnish contacted us. They were wanting to put together a compilation of St. Louis punk bands, reissue recordings or issue things that had never been put out. And
they own, of course, BDR Records.
Right, and they own BDR Records.
And we were really wary, actually.
Yes.
We were going, what is he talking about? Like, why does he want to put that out? We
couldn't understand.
Exactly. We were just like totally flummoxed.
Well,
Well, like, why would he want to do that?
It wasn't very well received back in the day. So the idea that somebody,
like many decades
later
would
was
even be
interested in it.
us.
It was kind
And
of
he
like-
had just kind of found these the old tapes from the recording sessions.
He contacted us, and we had a cassette tape taken from the board of the recording
And so he was
studio.
working off that.
And he was working off that.
Wow. So you guys did say yes, this 4-song EP came out, as still not the complete album, you're not on vinyl. What was that like, Jane, to have that moment?
I just loved seeing it. I love vinyl anyway, but it's like a dream come true. It's just sad that it wasn't. Now we're old ladies, but it's kind of sad that we didn't have the lives that we wanted to live together. Playing in a rock band and touring and stuff.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
I wanted us to be like the
Young
Monkees and like live
people.
together and tour and just,
That was our great inspiration.
oh my
One of
gosh,
them,
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
We're talking to 3 founding members of the Welders. This was a band that was formed in Florissant in 1975 when its members were still very young teens. They're seeing a resurgence in interest, and in fact, an album version of the album that they recorded, a vinyl version of that album, is now coming out this month. You can use the pre-order link. It's at rerunrecordsstl.com. Jane, it feels like this is very bittersweet for you.
It is, but I'm over it, But this
No,
was
she's not.
kind of like defining years of my life, as it turned out. It's like nothing else that I did since then seemed to top what we did as teenagers.
Oh, but Jane played with Courtney Love, and she played on stage with Beck. So
That was a fluke. Both of those were flukes.
To you, it feels like the collaboration and the excitement of this group was more than those star
yes,
appearances.
It was the friendship and the meeting of minds. We just had it was just really great to be together in a group, of like-minded young people, and it was just a lot of fun. Just a great way to grow up.
So this album that is coming out now, it's not just being released locally here in St. Louis. It's also being distributed overseas. Here's label owner Jason Rerun.
When we released the EP, we sold as many in Japan as we did in the States, if not more. And the appeal there is because both Caroline and Jane are, they're Japanese American, but it's also, there is a very rabid collector group in Japan that is into early punk rock and indie music. So it just was two Japanese Americans and all female band, that they'd never heard of. One store alone in Tokyo that I've been selling to for years. I think they sold maybe 85 or 100 copies just in one store of the EP, which is pretty unheard of. I mean, most stores will, they'll buy 5 copies or maybe 10 if they think it's something that's going to sell well. But Japan is going to be the biggest market again. I know it is.
And that is Jason Rerun of BDR Records. Carolyn, it's kind of amazing to hear. I mean, your music is being purchased in Japan.
I know. My mom is really thrilled. So, yeah, how bizarre that this is happening now. It's phenomenal.
And I know you guys also really credit the Missouri History Museum show where it looked at St. Louis history, that it put you guys back in the spotlight.
Oh my gosh, we are so appreciative of Andrew Wanko for including our obscure band in that whole exhibit. I mean, how wonderful for us to represent a portion of St. Louis music.
He's a very smart man.
He's going places.
Rusty, do you think there's any chance the band could get back together?
No.
I want this. No?
No.
Caroline says no.
I'd do it.
I feel like Jane would do this.
Yeah, I know she would.
But the rest of you're not on board for that?
Now I have feelings of ambivalence. I was always the one with massive stage fright whenever we were going to perform, so I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I do find myself thinking, though, I mean, some of you keep kind of like downplaying a little bit the Welders, and yet there were so many bands that came out of high schools in St. Louis in the 70s and the 80s. Caroline, what do you think it was about the Welders that still persists, still remains today?
I think it's just when you look at it from the perspective of many decades later, then you realize, you know what? We were something a bit out of the ordinary. But for me, I know Jane thought we were, fantastic. But for me, it's like, oh, yeah, here we're a high school band, and, we're not even playing at, any kind of high school dances or anything. But I just never thought of it that way. But when you look, like I said, in the perspective of now through history, yeah, we were something special.
Well, at the time we were unique, but not in a way that was perhaps appreciated by those around us.
Jane, do you feel vindicated by the fact that the band is seeing this great resurgence of interest? You knew it all along.
Yes, everybody has caught up to me.
I think they have.
All hail Jane.
Well,
The great Karnak. No.
yeah, I mean, I always thought we were great. We were funny, we were cute, we dressed great, and we played okay. Our songs were, punchy, catchy. What's not to like?
It was lightning in a bottle.
There you go.
This record also is going to be distributed in Europe by Bachelor Records out of Salzburg, so we're
Yes,
very
thank
excited
you.
about that.
Yeah.
And this album also, it's not like it's something that we had already had ready back in the 70s. This is, we were searching for things to add on there. So we have some practice songs on there.
Live stuff?
Yeah, from our mom's basement.
That were on
and-
cassette tape.
Yeah, again.
We
there-
have to really give kudos to Justin Perkins at Mystery Room Mastering. For,
Well, if you're not curious to hear this album now, I don't know what's wrong with you. So we want to encourage you. The pre-order link is at rerunrecordsstl.com. You can also find that on our website, stlonair.show. We also want to mention there will likely be a Welders album release party January 9th at the Royale. Stay tuned for details on that. And I want to thank the three of the founding members of the Welders for joining me today in studio. Caroline Fujimoto, Welders bassist, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you for having us.
And also Kelly Draper, better known as Rusty, Welders guitarist. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for not making us cry.
I tried, man. And Jane Fujimoto, Welders drummer and then keyboardist. Thank you so much.
I'm crying. Thank you.
I did make you cry. Thank you. Let's go out of the show with just a little bit more from the Welders. This is Baby Don't Go.
Well, I guess I never thought that I'd see you this way. Didn't want to make you cry. And I guess I never thought that I'd need you this way. And I'm sorry I had to lie. Sorry I had to lie. Well, don't say goodbye, baby, don't go. Oh, baby, don't go. Baby, don't go. Oh, baby, don't go.
This episode was produced by Emily Woodbury with audio engineering by Aaron Dorr and production assistance from Jane Mather Glass. It was mixed and edited by Aaron. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here. If you learned something new from today's episode, consider leaving us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the easiest way to help people discover our show. We appreciate it. Thank you. St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.